Don't compare yourself with other people, compare yourself with who you were yesterday. The idea that women were oppressed throughout history is an appalling theory. Happiness is a pointless goal. If you don't stand your ground, then all that happens is people push you backwards. Life is tragic. You are tiny and flawed and ignorant and weak, and everything else is huge, complex, and overwhelming. Power is competence. Free speech is not just another value. It's the foundation of Western civilization. It makes sense that a witch lives in a swamp. Part of the core information that I've been purveying is that identity politics is a sick game. You don't play racial, ethnic, and gender identity games. The left plays them on behalf of the oppressed, let's say, and the right tends to play them on behalf of nationalism and ethnic pride. I think they're equally dangerous. We're so immaturely cynical as a culture. We're not wise enough to look at an institution like marriage and to really think about what it means and what it signifies. It signifies a place where people can tie the ropes of their lives together so that they're stronger. It signifies a place where people can tell the truth to one another. Once someone has spent enough time cultivating bad habits and biding their time, they are much diminished. Much of what they could have been is dissipated. To master a new technology, you have to play with it. If you learn a martial art, you learn to be dangerous, but simultaneously, you learn to control it. To me, ideology is corrupt. It's a parasite on religious structures. To be an ideologue is to have all of the terrible things that are associated with religious certainty and none of the utility. If you're an ideologue, you believe everything that you think. If you're religious, there's a mystery left there. There were some great clinicians in the 20th century, great man. Freud was a genius, Jung was a genius, Carl Rogers was a genius. There's a half dozen psychologists of the 1950s and humanists of the 1960s. I could hardly sit through Frozen. There was an attempt to craft a moral message and to build a story around that, instead of building the story and letting the moral message emerge. It was the subjugation of art to propaganda, in my estimation. We have to rediscover the eternal values and then live them out. It's in responsibility that most people find the meaning that sustains them through life. It's not in happiness. It's not in impulsive pleasure. I don't tell people, you are okay the way that you are. That's not the right story. The right story is, you are way less than you could be. The truth is something that burns. It burns off dead wood. And people don't like having the dead wood burned off, often because they're 95% dead wood. No one gets away with anything, ever, so take responsibility for your own life. Don't be dependent, at all, ever, period. If you're talking to a man who wouldn't fight with you under any circumstances whatsoever, then you're talking to someone for whom you have absolutely no respect. As pessimistic as I am about the nature of human beings and our capacity for atrocity and malevolence and betrayal and laziness and inertia, and all those things, I think we can transcend all that and set things straight. You should do what other people do unless you have a very good reason not to. The most propagandistic element of Frozen was the transformation of the prince at the beginning of the story, who was a perfectly good guy, into a villain with no character development whatsoever about 3/4 of the way to the ending. Men and women aren't the same. And they won't be the same. That doesn't mean that they can't be treated fairly. You can't go backward in life. I'm interested in what motivates individuals to participate in atrocious acts to support their ideological identification. It's very difficult to regulate yourself, and if you learn to do that, well, it starts to spill over. I'm not going to be a mouthpiece for language that I detest. You can't just slander someone, defame them, lie about them. You can't incite people to crime. There are all sorts of reasonable restrictions on free speech that are already codified in the British common law system. If you want to occupy the C-suite or the top 0.1% in any organization, you have to be obsessively devoted to your career at the expense of everything else. And women look at that and they think, no. Abortion is clearly wrong. It is more difficult to rule yourself than to rule a city. Accept the terrible responsibility of life with eyes wide open. There's a personality trait known as agreeableness. Agreeable people are compassionate and polite. And agreeable people get paid less than disagreeable people for the same job. Women are more agreeable than men. Become aware of your own insufficiency. The people who hold that our culture is an oppressive patriarchy, they don't want to admit that the current hierarchy might be predicated on competence. Music has an intrinsic meaning, which has always been mysterious to me. I've studied authoritarianism for a very long time, for 40 years, and they're started by people's attempts to control the ideological and linguistic territory. You may say, well, dragons don't exist. It's like, yes, they do. The category predator and the category dragon are the same category. It absolutely exists. It's a superordinate category. It exists absolutely more than anything else. In fact, it really exists. I have a hard time figuring out what kind of box to put me into, because I don't know exactly what's going on around me or why. But I need to stay outside of boxes because then I can look at what's inside of them without being part of them. I'm a practical person. I'm not too bad a carpenter. I can renovate houses. You can say, well, isn't it unfortunate that chaos is represented by the feminine? Well, it might be unfortunate, but it doesn't matter because that is how it's represented. It's been represented like that forever, and there are reasons for it. You can't change it. It's not possible. This is underneath everything. Adopt responsibility for your own well-being. Try to put your family together. Try to serve your community. Try to seek for eternal truth. That's the sort of thing that can ground you in your life enough so that you can withstand the difficulty of life.